This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
Danilo's free, and it goes to Gibbs wide.
First time we've seen them attack them, and there's Francis! Well, that's what I wanted to see Robinson do. Taylor one, he scores! And the City ground goes ballistic! Here's Bob Williams. He's through here! And in the end, Forrest will say it doesn't matter how you play as long as you win it. Yeah!
Hello and welcome back to Red Side of Trent for the fan preview as we discuss this week's up-and-coming fixture with an opposition fan. This week we are joined by Palace fan Dan Cook, who joined us last season. How, Dan, are you all right?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. It's been a good start to Palace this season so far, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think unexpectedly in many ways. You know, it's difficult, obviously, to get a true gauge on how your team are going to do before a ball is kicked. But with Wilfried Zaha's departure and with Michael Olise's injury pre-season and, you know, a relative lack of incoming transfer business, I would suggest most Palace fans weren't particularly optimistic going into the campaign. But to have as many points on the board as we already do, you know, especially when you consider that we've managed to win away at Manchester United last week, you know, it just really did boost everyone's spirits, particularly after we'd obviously lost there in the League Cup a few days before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would have been a coupon buster, wouldn't it, on Saturday? But let's just talk about that game. You obviously took a 1-0 win, a wonderful finish from Joachim Andersen, it's said to least, but without a few kind of sacrifices in them. I mean, Eberechi has been ruled out for 6 weeks, it's been reported, hasn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, if you actually look at the attacking options, or at least the creative attacking options that we have, Eberechi has been shouldering the burden going forward pretty much all season long, because obviously Michael Olise is currently out after injuring himself with the French under-21s in the summer. You've got Matthias França that's come in from Flamengo over the summer. But, you know, even though he comes with extremely high expectations, it's not a situation where we've been able to see him actually strut his stuff in our colours yet. We can't place too much expectation on him, but obviously when you sign a new Brazilian teenager, there is a certain degree of anticipation that comes with it. So people have been spinning their wheels in that sense, but to lose Ebbs for, as it's been reported, 6 weeks is obviously a major blow. And going into this game this weekend, I'm not 100% sure how exactly Roy Hodgson intends to set up from a tactical point of view.
What's been the difference between this season, last season so far? I know it's a bit early to tell, but it seems like, I mean, even if you're losing games, they're quite narrow kind of defeats and that. But what's the major difference? Is obviously losing Zaha has been a major one, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Wilf going was one of those situations that felt on one hand inevitable and on the other still a real emotional, you know, kick in the stomach, because, I mean, your listeners may not be aware, but we offered him a 4-year contract on £200,000 a week. So, you know, even though we didn't get a definitive answer from him one way or the other in the early parts of the summer, I think there were plenty of people that expected him to take that money, given what it would have guaranteed for him over the next 4 years. But instead, he chose to move to Galatasaray and obviously play in the Champions League. And as we saw earlier on this week, you know, he's sort of managed to get that goal against Manchester United and achieve one of his dreams there. But from a tactical point of view this season, obviously the defensive partnership between Anderson and Gay is huge. It has been for the last couple of years. Jefferson Lerma coming in on a free transfer from Bournemouth in the opening weeks of the campaign, at least prior to his injury in the last international break. It gave us a real sense of stability next to Chet Decore in the base of the midfield. But we've been able to get decent results in games, despite the fact that, as I just mentioned, Eberechi is technically the only real creative attacking talent that we've had at our disposal. And the hope is that post-international break, both França and Michael Olise will be approaching full fitness, and we will have a little bit more attacking thrust in terms of a creative presence. But I mean, obviously that doesn't help us in this particular game this weekend against yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, did it worry Palace and the fan base about your transfer activity, because you, like you say, you only bought in Lerma, França, and then Dean Henderson, Rob Holding come in late doors, didn't he? And well, Dean Henderson got injured in his first game, and I can see why. I mean, a lot of Forest fans were a bit like, they kind of ate humble pie because they moaned at the ownership or the recruitment team for lowballing, and then he's gone to Palace and unfortunately injured himself there. But you kind of does it worry you that if, like, you've got all these injuries, the depth is maybe not there, but the obviously when you've got a full strength 11, it's one of the you'd say it's one of the top sides in the league, probably top 10 at least.
Well, I
On
mean,
paper.
it's a tricky one because, on one hand, you can bemoan a lack of strength in depth below the sort of starting 11, 12, 13. But then I would argue that unless you're a European club, you can't really expect your, in inverted commas, reserves to be Premier League quality players because, and it's a bugbear of mine. I often hear Palace fans, and not just Palace fans, but fans of clubs in a similar bracket to ourselves say this, that they expect, top quality players to be able to come in off the bench. But it's easy to convince a top quality player to come in and play a bit part role in a European regular. It's different if you're a club like a Forest or a Palace or a Wolves, where if you are getting a top quality player, they're going to be expecting to start every week because they want to put themselves in the shop window. So, when you've had as many injuries as we've got, it's one of those situations where you sort of just have to take it. I think, as you just mentioned, if we have a full strength squad in terms of our starting 11 and a couple of players off the bench, then it is genuinely very good and could be relied upon to push for a top half place. But, once you get down to relying on the likes of Will Hughes or Jara Riedewald or Chris Richards or Rob Holding to slot in, then there is going to be a minor drop in quality, and that's no disrespect to them. It's just part and parcel of being a mid-table Premier League club. And with that in mind, I think Roy Hodgson is an ideal person to have in the dugout because he is such a steady hand and he won't get carried away one way or the other, and the tactical ideology will be, very solid regardless of who we're coming up against from week to week.
Yeah, you kind of go into my next point because I was going to ask you about Roy Hodgson. So last season, I remember you and I spoke about him and where Palace's future lies because it could be this season and then he actually retires again. I had to look at Palace's like managers through the years, and predominantly it's British based. I completely forgot Steve Coppell was there for like 9 years at one point in the early
He's
90s.
four different spells he's had.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hodgson's had a couple. Warnock has had maybe one or two. I
He's
think.
had two, yeah. We've had
Yeah,
a couple of returning managers. There's no doubt
yeah,
about that.
and then you've had a lot. And then the two foreigners you've had have failed miserably. In all honesty, so my question was: is Paddy McCarthy still the man that could potentially come and take over the reins as someone to slot in who's been there as in a coaching and a playing capacity? Or I've seen in the last day that Palace are monitoring Kieran McKenna at Ipswich, who are obviously taking the Championship by storm since their promotion.
Yeah, I mean, I know I mentioned Paddy last time, and in an ideal world, you look at a situation with a player that was our captain, who's been around the football club for a number of years and coached the academy, and it seems like, a nice natural sort of progression. But he was given the reins when Roy Hodgson was taken ill away at Aston Villa a couple of weeks back. Obviously, we ended up succumbing to a 3-1 defeat in that game, albeit in relatively controversial circumstances. I'm not sure that the hierarchy will be completely sold that he is the right man in the long term. But at the same time, I look at Kieran McKenna. Obviously, he's an extremely attractive candidate given what he's been able to do with Ipswich across the last 12 to 18 months. And, his whole managerial CV seems to be very upwardly mobile. But I still, regardless of the fact that we obviously reside in the Premier League and we've been here a decade and, we are, I suppose, an established Premier League club, I still feel as though he will probably want to stick around at Ipswich, particularly if they get promoted. And, with that in mind, and it's something I've sort of alluded to on my own podcast over the last couple of weeks, the beauty of Roy Hodgson is that because he is a manager who is very much in the autumn of his career, we aren't ever going to have him poached by a top club because it just wouldn't happen. Whereas when you get a manager like Kieran McKenna, with the best will in the world, we are a stepping stone to him because he would have designs on making it to a European regular. And it would be a case of us potentially only getting a year or two from him. And obviously, you have to accept that as a football club of our stature. But I can understand as well that if Roy Hodgson was open to another 1 year extension at the end of this particular season, that the hierarchy wouldn't want to write that off purely because of his age, because ultimately he's an incredibly reliable, steady man. And if you look at what he's been able to do in terms of stabilising the football club following on from Patrick Vieira's departure, with 2/3 of last season gone, it is quite remarkable. I think we're sixth in the table since he actually came in, which I'm sure everyone, whether they're a Palace fan, a Forest fan, or just a neutral, will accept is an incredible feat. Particularly, so many people stereotype and pigeonhole him and suggest that he's, just this dinosaur. But I often say it, Abir Eze, there's a 50-year age gap between he and Roy, and you wouldn't know it in terms of the performances that he's able to get out from him. So he is a pure football man, and whilst I wouldn't expect him to sign another 1 year extension, I wouldn't write it off if indeed he is open to the idea of it.
Well, he's still got plenty to fight with him after seeing him have that scuffle with Max Lowe earlier in the season. Yeah,
first day of the season, he was going to square up.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it's good to see life in the old dog, isn't it? But
exactly.
Having seen you on James Alcott's Ripple Effect, Dan, I'm not sure if you got asked this. I couldn't remember actually, but with us being nearly 10 games in, you could say, if including cup games, we are kind of 10 games in. Has the departure of Zaha benefited you in any way? And if so, who's been like that? I know as is the obvious answer, but has anyone like kind of out of the blue kind of took that role upon themselves, or is it hard to tell yet? And maybe is Matthias França going to be that kind of guy once he's up and running?
I mean, obviously, the hope is that Matthias França comes in and, takes the league by storm, rips people apart with step overs and scores 30 goals in his debut season. But, I mean, at the same time, I'm trying to temper my expectations because he's a Brazilian teenager, new culture, new league, new tactics, new language, whatever you want to call it. In terms of replacing the hole left by Zaha, I probably sound like something of a broken record to people that have heard me speak on podcasts over the years, but I genuinely don't believe there's a way for anyone to ever replicate what Wilfried Zaha offered to Crystal Palace, because he was lightning in a bottle. Someone that grew up down the road, someone that took the club on his shoulders so often, kept us afloat pretty much single-handedly across 2 or 3 years, and really enjoyed that sort of pantomime villain role. Even against Manchester United for Galatasaray in midweek, he scored, cupped his ears at their fans. He just enjoys ag, and that in itself is,
I saw
something
it.
that we love him for. But with that in mind, that sort of special alchemy that you get with Wilf, I'm not sure anyone's ever going to do that again, because you can look at Michael Elise and his sort of standoffish presence, or the way that Abir Eze will glide on the ball. They're not quite Wilf. He's a unique character. So to try and sort of, I don't know, put a square peg in a round hole and look towards a direct replacement for him was always going to be impossible. And that's exactly why we never actually greenlit his sale in the first place, because no amount of money could ever actually replicate what we would be losing with his departure. And, I think really the only thing we can be truly happy for, given the fact that he's moved on, is that it potentially has given a pathway to the likes of Ajeza and Raksaki, maybe in the fullness of time to come, making a name for himself in the first team, but also to prove to ourselves as a football club that we can be stable in the Premier League without him, because there was always this part in the back of your mind where you felt as though when he left, would we just crumble? But that hasn't been the case so far. Although I would argue that is largely probably down to Roy Hodgson and the sort of calming effect that he has on the entire football club.
Yeah, the only thing I can't really compare it because Brennan Johnson didn't stay at Forest as long as Wilfried Zaha stayed at Palace. But I guess you can kind of compare it to that, whereas like we've like hung on to him for a bit longer, managed to get 50 million, and then recruit quite well. So the proof will be in the pudding at the end of the season, whether we progress or not, whether that was the right move.
Imagine you'd had Brennan Johnson for 10 years in the Premier League and never known whether you could survive without him.
Yeah.
That's basically what we had to contend with this summer, which is why the £200,000 a week contract offer for a 30-year-old who was injury prone went in, and everyone outside the football club said that's financial suicide, and everyone inside the Palace bubble said we don't care.
That's fair enough. How pleased have you been for Eberechi Eze and Mark Gurhey getting England call-ups in the the last international break, and then obviously Eze's going to miss out now on this next one, isn't he? So, but how pleased have you been for those guys?
It's obviously fantastic whenever your club gets players who get international recognition, but from an England point of view, there's always been a sort of inferiority complex that exists with Palace fans as to whether or not our players truly get the recognition they deserve. I think in both Eze and Gay's case, it was undeniable that they should be involved because. And Ebbs is obviously a unique case because of how beautiful he is on the ball and the way that he plays. I don't think there's a single neutral that would argue he doesn't deserve a place in the England squad when he's fully fit because he's capable of doing such incredible things. But Mark, I mean, I say it all the time. Of all the players that we brought in since 2020, Abir Eze, Michael Elise, Chet Decore, Mark Gay, Joachim Anderson, whoever, he is the one that I would be most loath to lose because I don't think anyone outside the Palace bubble, maybe other than Swansea fans who had him, of course, on loan for that season prior to him joining us, realise how good Mark Gay is. He's a Rolls Royce of a centre back in every single sense. And despite the fact that he's only 23 years old, he's a genuine leader. I'd give him the armband now. He pretty much is the captain, even though out of pure respect to the longevity of his time at Palace, it is Joel Ward. I think even Joel would argue that they're sort of joint captains on the pitch. And the one thing I would say about Mark is, I mean, obviously he started both international games over the most recent break. Unfortunately, picked up an injury at half-time in that Scotland game. But whenever I've watched Palace players pulling on an England shirt before, I watch it with a sense of trepidation, trying to make sure from my vantage point on the sofa that they don't do anything wrong. But as soon as Mark was on the pitch, I just knew that he wouldn't. That he has such a ridiculous level of confidence and he's so assured in his game that I was completely calm with it. And I think, I, I have no doubt that in the fullness of time, everyone will realise how good Mark Gay is. But, for now, he is still something of a well-kept secret from a Palace fan's point of view because I honestly think he should be starting as the first name on the team sheet from an England centre-back perspective for the next 5 or 10 years at the very least.
I discovered him on FM a couple of seasons ago and was like, and then you kind of follow people in real life, don't you? And obviously Steve Cooper had him at Swansea, so I think he'll know him very well. Obviously played in the same team with Gibbs White and Callum Hudson-Odoi, who are going to have a lovely reunion at Selhurst on Saturday evening. So that'll be fun. But I generally think Eze and Gurhi are like top 6 players in the next year
There's
or
no
two.
doubt about
So that's going to be hard to replace them eventually, but you'll get like ridiculous money for them. So that'll be good, I guess. Is it a good? I know you kind of already mentioned it. Is it a good time to play Palace, even though you've come back from a really good win at the weekend, but because of all the injuries, is it kind of an opportunity to get at you a little bit, or are you still quite quietly confident?
It's a tricky one. I have to admit, I'm a naturally pessimistic football fan. Normally, when my mates say to me, what do you reckon today? I'm always like, well, we're probably going to struggle to get past them because of this or that. And I actually said on Monday to a group of my mates, don't worry, we'll do Forest. And that's never something that I normally come out with. And then within 24 hours, the news came out that Epi Eze was out for 6 weeks. So that would teach me for feeling confident at any point. But at the same time, I can't say for sure, but I know the way Roy Hodgson works. And with Abir Eze being absent from the starting 11, he will still be looking to obviously win the game on home turf. No disrespect to Forest here, but it has to be viewed as a winnable game for us at home. But doing so with a tactical framework that is as solid as a rock. I would imagine and I believe that Odsonne Edouard is now back in the first team fold after he's been suffering with a hamstring issue. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we go 4-4-2 against yourselves with Mateta and Edouard up front. It worked against Aston Villa, albeit, we ended up losing that game away from home. But with Abir Eze no longer there, the 5-man midfield can be changed to a 4-man midfield, and it sort of negates the need for a number 10. I would argue that possibly that means we're a little bit more blunted in terms of our attacking play. But if you've got 2 front men up there, then of course it does change the dynamic somewhat. So maybe we won't be as formulaic in terms of the way that you would view Palace from an outsider's perspective, and it might be a little bit different from a tactical point of view. But I'm still, I wouldn't say quietly confident, but I don't think we'll just, fall apart, because if there's one thing Roy Hodgson is, it's tactically disciplined, and he will have drilled the players all week long in Abiriaze's absence to make sure that we go into this game this weekend knowing exactly what the assignment is.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone listened to our pod from the weekend, I mean, I was really frustrated because we played a Brentford side, which I saw on paper as probably their weakest Forest have played for years. So this kind of falls into that sort of similar category for me. But we'll soon see. Obviously, being an away side, you can't always. It's always going to be tricky, especially at a place like Selhurst. But where do you see Palace finishing, Dan? What's your hot take for the season? Would you say as well?
It's tricky because it sounds boring, but I can't really see us anywhere other than between about 15th and 11th. And that might sound a little bit defeatist, but I think, for me, and this is no disrespect to the three teams that have been promoted, but you look at them, you look at Everton, possibly Wolves, possibly Forest. I think we are, probably at least better than 5 teams in the league, particularly if we're fully fit. But at the same time, the top half of the table has been so disrupted in recent seasons with the likes of Newcastle, Brighton, Brentford, Villa, to go with your archetypal elite clubs, that I'm just not sure, as we alluded to in the early part of the podcast, in terms of strength in depth, that we will be able to challenge for a place in the top half. So I don't think there's any disgrace in saying between 15th and 10th, and I don't think it's going to be far wrong. I think, it's what frustrated me so much about the cup game against Manchester United the other day, because I think that the squad, when it's even 2/3 fit, is more than good enough to be a Premier League side, regardless of what happens. So I wanted us to really have a go at the Cups this year, because, Roy Hodgson's got this 1-year contract, and I'm sure he would love to go out with a bang. That said, he obviously prioritised the Premier League game, and it worked out in the end because we got the clean sheet and the 3 points. But it is going to ultimately be, unless we have some sort of ridiculous run in the FA Cup, just to finish in that 5 position place. And, there comes a point, I think, from a football fan's perspective, and you don't want to sound spoiled or as if you're entitled, but when you've had a decade in one division, you'd love to have a go at the Cups. And with that in mind, I put it this way, if I was going to be really, really optimistic, I'd say something like 12th in an FA Cup semi-final. But, for now, we'll stick with 14th and going out in the third round.
I mean, I said at the start of the season, I said to a few friends that if we're like brushing shoulders with yourselves and maybe a Brentford kind of, I'd say that's a good season for Forest. So, I expect Palace to finish in that kind of region. It's very Championship-esque, in my opinion, in a sort of weird, insulting way. But we'll digress. But what's your thoughts been on Forest so far this season? If you've managed to see anything.
I mean, I find Forest quite an interesting prospect because, I mean, I think I said it to you last time I was on the pod. There were plenty of people, when you first arrived in the Premier League, it was unexpected in many people's minds, and there was such a high turnover of players. But I always had genuine faith in Steve Cooper as a coach, and I felt as though he would get the balance right and the alchemy of that squad right, and that proved to be the case because, of course, you secured mathematical safety. The last game of the season was against yourselves at Selhurst, wasn't it? So, that was a party atmosphere for your fans. And I think you will be safe for the drop again, because I think when the going gets tough, if indeed it does at any point this season, you will get the results necessary. I actually fancied your boys to get a result against Brentford in terms of, all three in your most recent games. That didn't come to fruition, obviously, for reasons that we won't go into now. But, I just think you are going to be a very solid Premier League outfit under him. And that shouldn't be something that is sort of dismissed or just accepted, because so many clubs, I mean, look at Burnley and Vincent Kompany, took the Championship by storm last season. And even though they've won last night away at Luton, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have an easy run of it. And, that ability to win promotion and then stay in the Premier League in your first year, it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. And I genuinely think that the feat that Steve Cooper pulled off with Forest, and what he probably will do again this season, should be looked upon as a genuine success. And I think he will do that quite comfortably.
Nice, fair enough. What can Forest expect from Palace then going into Saturday? Do you think it's, like you say, going to be that 4-4-2? Is it going to be? Will Palace be looked to be on the front foot, or do you think you'll kind of maybe try and lure us in?
I mean, it's obviously difficult to know without the presence of Eze in the side because he has been that key attacking, jewel in the crown. But we will be resolute. We might make it more of a dogfight, but we do still have, I don't want to talk down our players too much here. Like Will Hughes, I know he's got a certain history with Forest, but if anything, that will make him even more up for this game.
Oh
You
yeah,
look at a
100%.
situation where he doesn't necessarily get a guaranteed start most weeks anyway. I believe Jefferson Lerma is edging towards a return to first team action, and with the international break coming, you can pretty much guarantee that once that's out of the way, he will be back in the first team fold. So Will Hughes will really, I assume, look towards this game as an opportunity for him to really make a mark. Czech Decore is an incredible defensive midfielder who's got it all. Jordan Ayew, incredibly underrated. I would imagine he will start and be a key to Roy Hodgson's tactical setup. And as I say, if Odsonne Edouard is back and fully fit, then we probably will go with both he and Gianfilippo Mateta up front, and that can cause chaos because you don't often see Premier League sides these days going with two front men. It feels like something of a sort of bygone era move that to go to your archetypal 4-4-2. But I mean, if you actually look at the numbers that JP and Edouard have put up together this season, it's been incredibly impressive. So, I wouldn't necessarily write off our chances, but at the same time, the loss of Eze is undeniably a major blow and hopefully one that doesn't cause us too many problems.
Yeah, it's a throwback. 4-4-2. Football goes round in circles, doesn't it, Dan?
It's Roy Hodgson.
I
He's been
mean,
there
I mean,
since 4-4-2 was a thing.
Pep's trying to play five up front these days, so that it is happening. So I think the atmosphere will be good on Saturday. Although I don't think you'll hear 90 minutes of waka waka this
No,
time
thank
round.
God.
So
God, with the first 10 minutes, I was like, fair play to him. And then on 85, I was like, do you think they're ever going to stop?
No. Once we know one song, that's all you'll ever hear. Like that's why you hear Magic on and off the pitch every home game because that's all everyone knows. But who do you fear from Forest in this game? Who do you kind of think like when they're going to get on the board, and you're going to go, "Whoa."
Well, it sounds like a bit of a cliche, and I don't want it to come across that way. But I genuinely think that your team are the definition of a cohesive unit. I don't particularly look at one individual at Forest and think, well, there's the key man. And if anything, I would actually say that is something of a compliment because it means that we used to have it in our first few years in the Premier League once Wilfred Zaha returned. It was a case of trying to isolate him. And if you did, you snuffed out the Palace problems. But I think you do have different tools that can hurt a team. With that in mind, I wouldn't necessarily want to nail it down to one particular individual. As you mentioned, the loss of Brennan Johnson is quite a seismic one, but I think it's credit to Steve Cooper and the squad as a whole that it hasn't necessarily impacted you and you're not necessarily sitting there at the foot of the table worrying about the loss of such a key attacking threat. So, yeah, it might sound like a bit of a cop-out, but I wouldn't nail my colours to the mast and name one man as the key problem for me going into this game.
Yeah, cool. Last couple, Dan, before I let you go. But what's your lineup prediction and a score prediction?
I will go with Johnson in goal, Mitchell left back, Gay and Anderson in the centre, Joel Ward right back, Jeff Schlupp probably playing on the left-hand side, unfortunately. Will Hughes next to Chet Decore, Jordan Ayew on the right, and then Edouard and Mateta up front. Archetypal 4-4-2, no surprises. And I will go with a 2-2 draw, I think.
Oof, Desmond on a Saturday night. But and then before you go, Dan, I think away supporters will enjoy this one. But what's your pub recommendations for a travelling red?
Do you know what? I'm not actually sure what the official away pub is. I know plenty of Palace pubs, but I wouldn't want to be chucking those out because you'll end up getting turned away from the door. I think there's one. There's one on the roundabout. I think it's the Weatherspoons as you go towards the White Horse Lane. I know that won't necessarily mean a great deal to you. In fact, if you want, I will find the name of the pub for you after we finish recording this, send it to you, and you can put it in the description to the podcast if you want. Because I think that is where away fans drink. But obviously, I don't frequent these places because why would I go in there? So yeah,
Of
I will
course,
try
of
and
course.
find the name of that pub. I believe it is a Wetherspoons, and it is on the roundabout next to Whitehorse Lane. But as I say, a Nottingham Forest fan, unless they are a Croydon native, I will not know what I am talking about. But yeah, I will
No.
endeavour to find that for you now.
Oh, thank you, Dan. And then obviously, Dan, before you go, if you want to plug your pod or your Twitter, then feel free to do so. I know many people follow you anyway from a Forest point of view, to be honest. Your stuff's flying about everywhere all the time.
Well, that's lovely to hear. But yeah, basically, if you type in HLTCO into Twitter, into Google, into YouTube, into Patreon, they will all come up. I do a podcast on Palace every day. Not that you would necessarily be interested in listening to that as a Forest fan, but I also do one on general football Monday to Friday, covering everything from the Premier League, League One, League Two, the Championship, as well as Spain, Germany, Italy, and France. And the YouTube channel, which started at the beginning of 2023, has a video going up at least once a week on different topics across the game. So if you're interested in hearing my views on any of that, please do consider giving me a follow there. I may well even cover Forest. You never know.
Brill. Thank you very much for your time, Dan. We'll see you on Saturday night at Selhurst, hopefully.
No worries, mate. Looking forward to it.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.